بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته وانتهج نهجه إلى يوم الدين. تركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. ثم أما بعد. So alhamdulillah, we are swiftly approaching the last third of Ramadan. This is the 19th night for many of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our deeds and accept our fasting and accept our muhawalat, our sa'i, our striving to try to get closer to Him. And we have had the barakah and the blessing over the past nearly 2 months or so to be reading from al-Fath al-Rabbani al-Rabbani لسيد محي عبد al-Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu. So we've been reading from the sublime revelation and the divine merciful outpourings of Shaykh Abd Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani, arguably the greatest Shaykh, not of just his generation, but of perhaps his century and beyond. And it wasn't because he left behind necessarily great literary works, or he was that prolific in the books that he left behind that we can read. They probably number 10 to 15 or less. The others wrote more. But generally, there are two types of ulama, and sometimes there's crossover between them. There are the types of ulama who write prolifically, and their words then carry on via their books. And these are people like Imam al-Ghazali, Imam al-Suyuti, al-Fakhr al-Razi, Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi, others. And then there are some of the ulama who didn't write so prolifically, but they left behind those who embodied and carried their message and then transmitted to others. So really, we say, Banu al-Rijal, they built men or they built human beings who then would transmit that message, and then it would proliferate. And I think Sayyid Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani is one of those people, was able to do that, even though he wrote as well. And even though Imam al-Ghazali and others also left behind students, but their legacy is more properly acknowledged and recognized via the works that they wrote, where Sayyid Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani, I would estimate that the legacy is in the students that he had and the many, many people that he reached, who then were able to take his message and spread it very far and wide. And now we speak of people who follow the Qadiri way, or the way of Sayyid Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani, from all over the globe, from Sri Lanka to the Middle East to North Africa to Malaysia to Indonesia, West Africa, East Africa, Sub-Saharan, South Africa, Egypt, Libya, and so forth. So that is a dalil. It's an indication that he was muwaffaq, he was given divine success and divine providence. Allahu A'lam. So we've reached the 52nd discourse out of 62. So it seems that corresponding to the days of Ramadan, in terms of about 10 of these left, and perhaps about 10 or 11 days and nights of Ramadan left, and we hope, inshallah, to try to finish it before the end of Ramadan, if possible. So I'm going to read from something in the middle, because then I'm going to skip to the 53rd discourse. And he has something here about taqwa that I found very profound. He says عن بعضهم رحمة الله تعالى عليه أنه قال: حقيقة التقوى أنك لو جمعت ما في قلبك وتركته في طبق مكشوف وطفت به في السوق لم يكن فيه شيء يستحي منه. يا جاهل ما يكفيك أنك غير متق حتى إذا قيل لك اتق الله تغضب، إذا قيل لك الحق تسمع وتتهاون، ثم إذا أنكر عليك منكر تغتاظ عليه وتشفي غيظك منه. So find it. So this is page 330, and like the third paragraph down, he said, one of the wise, may Allah be pleased with him, is reported as having said, the real meaning of pious devotion or taqwa is that if you were to gather up everything that is in your heart, set it on an uncovered tray, and then walk all around the market with it, there would be nothing there to make you feel in any way embarrassed. O ignorant one, as if it were not enough that you are not pious, when someone tells you to observe your duty to Allah, you get angry. When someone tells you the truth, you treat what you hear as insignificant. And then if someone criticizes you, you feel enraged and take your rage out on him. The commander of the believers, Umar al-Khattab, anhu, is reported as having said, if a person is piously devoted to Allah, he does not vent his rage. So this meaning of taqwa means, and of course, alhamdulillah, this is not true. Also, all of us have been in a lot of trouble. People can see what was actually going on in our heart. But to get to a place of taqwa, of piety, of God consciousness, that we will have nothing that we would be embarrassed about. And he puts it in terms of people because that's kind of a more palpable example. But obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa muttala ala kulli shay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa ma'akum aynama kuntum. Allah is with us wherever we are, wherever we go. He sees everything that we do. And so He is the one that we should fear. He is the one that we should nastahi minhu, to feel shame and embarrassed before Him, that He should find us in a place other than that which He has commanded us to, and that He should not find us where He has commanded us to. There should be an istihya. So taqwa, they have a definition for it. They say it's avoiding prohibitions and doing the commandments in terms of acts. And in terms of the feeling in the heart, this is what the Shaykh is referring to here, this feeling of istihya, of haya, of feeling shame and feeling sorry that someone, especially, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should see you in a compromising position. And then there's different levels of taqwa. So taqwa al-qulub, and the Quran talks about taqwa al-qulub, فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارُ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. So it's not the eyes that are blind, right? But it is the blindness of the heart that can be blind. And this is what the Shaykh was talking about in our previous session, fiqh al-qulub, right? Or fasahat al-qulub. So the eloquence of the heart means it's a heart that's alive, that can understand things, see reality as it is, unperturbed and undamaged by, the comings and goings and the ups and the downs and the light and the darkness and the pity, the falteriness of everyday life, and the qila and the qad, and he said this and she said that, and I heard this about this person, but you know what, they said this about you. And so all these things for the al-qalb al-hayy, al-qalb al-mustayqidh, so the heart that's alive, the heart that is awake, the heart that has fasaha, right, that has this eloquence. These things don't really penetrate suwayda al-qalb. They don't get to the samim. They don't get to the innermost part, of the heart, the sir, the ruh of who we actually are. And he gives us some signs of how do we know where we're at. And the Quran tells us, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُ اتَّقِ اللَّهَ أَخَذَتْهُ الْعِزَّةُ بِالْإِثْمِ. if it said to them, ittaqillah, it's not to them, have taqwa of Allah ta'ala, akhazatu al-izzatu bil-ith, right? They feel indignified. How can you say ittaqillah? Who are you to say that to me? Right? Akhazatu al-izzatu bil-ith. Like the Shaykh is saying here, someone tells you to have taqwa of Allah, then you feel angry with them. Like, who are you to tell me that? And why are you saying that? Have fear of Allah. Are you saying that I don't already fear Allah? And then look at yourself. What are you doing exactly? So, we go through all of these kind of emotions and so forth when people, mention something to us about our own individual piety. And it was the way of the Arifin, the way of the Ahlillah, that they would not recoil at such things. In fact, they would welcome it, because it would be it's validating what they already feel in their heart. They don't feel like they're all that in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they feel that someone is sending a munabbih, a tanbih. Allah has sent a reminder to you, someone to remind you. And sometimes this reminder can come in a very nice form, right? It can come in someone who's maybe really concerned for your welfare and says it in a very delicate way, and in a very engaging way, in a way that you can hear it, and gives you the admonition in a manner that your heart accepts it, and you want to act upon it. And we wish that was always the case. We wish that always people would come and approach us and be tender and caring, and so forth like that. But it's not always going to be like that. Sometimes they will come in a way that is grating, and sometimes that even borders on just irritating and agitating, and it seems like they may have a personal stake or vendetta in it, and so they're kind of sticking it to you. Don't let that deter you or repel you from at least hearing them out and considering what they have to say. And Imam al-Ghazali said this is one of the ways that we can know about our uyub, know about our shortcomings. Sometimes we can hear it from a friend. Sometimes we can hear it from a mentor or a sheikh. Sometimes we can hear it from just by mixing with people and seeing similar attributes that we may be doing or behaviors and we see in others, and then we recoil at that and say, oh, do I look like that when I'm backbiting somebody? Do I sound so gossipy and horrible? And I want to stop doing that. And he said sometimes also it can come on the tongue of someone you consider not to be like a friend, but maybe an adversary. What they call today maybe frenemy, right? Someone who's, peer or something of yours, and you get along, but also there's kind of like unspoken competition, and there's kind of like sticking it back and forth and that sort of thing. Might even be a sibling or brother or sister or something like that. So Imam Ghazali says, don't let that deter you from at least considering the plausibility that what they have to say may have some truth to it. And he even said, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So yes, perhaps they went overboard, maybe they embellished it a bit, maybe they do have a personal kind of thing against you, but that shouldn't be the reason you dismiss whatever particular gripe that they may have with you. So always تكون على نفسك قبل أن تكون على الناس. كن مع الناس على نفسك is what they used to teach us. So be with people against yourself, right? So if they have something to say, then be their advocate. It's like stepping outside yourself and being on the other side and say, oh, they're saying this, this, and this about me, but it's not about me. Now I'm looking at it as like a third person. Maybe that's plausible. Maybe I should consider that. Maybe that's something to think about, so forth. And that way we can have a smoother road to our own taqwa. We have to consider that, as we mentioned in the previous session, with our awamir and our nawahi, in commands and prohibitions, لا نحتج بالقدر, right? We don't say this was the qadar of Allah that I disobeyed Allah, but we say this was my fault, my mistake, and I need to do better next time. But when we look to others, then we should give them the excuse and be more lenient by saying, well, that's their shaitan, he pushed them over the edge, or their nafs was strong, and they kind of lost out this time, and to try to soften the daghina, the kind of like enmity that you may feel towards somebody because of the way that they may have managed their relationship with you. And that's more looking at things bi'ayn al-haqiqa, right? So looking that really they don't operate by themselves, they're merely instruments of the divine will. And so when they're talking to you or dealing with you, look at as Allah is dealing with you, giving you with under the layers of humanity that you're looking at, under the flesh and the bone and the nerves and the soul, that's still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's sending you that message. And that's how the awliya operate. So they would say, you know, if they found a bad khuluq or a difficult interaction they had with a child of theirs or a spouse, or even with their animal, you know, the animal that they ride, their mount, they wouldn't blame the animal, they wouldn't blame the spouse, they wouldn't blame the child. They would say, oh, let me review my deeds. You know, there's something, I'm off. Something's off today because I am off. Perhaps I did something wrong. Perhaps I had made the mistake. And, you know, inshallah, the higher that you are in your maqam, and the more sensitive you become to these things, and the more clearly that you will see it. And the more readily you'll begin to see things that way, rather than becoming irritable and annoyed with everybody around you, because that is a type of i'tirad ala Allah. It is a type of objection to the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when tatakaddar, right? When you become so like in a bad place, in a dark place, and irritated because of what people say, what people don't say, or if they act nice to you or they don't act nice to you. That's why it's really, really essential and important that we shore up our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above all else. All those other relationships then will be refracted via the relationship with God. And if your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is productive, it's bountiful, it's intimate in the sense that you're thinking about Allah all the time, and to the degree لا يغيب عن قلبك, right? That He never actually leaves the presence. You know, you always feel like you're in the divine presence. It is a type of existence that the ulama say, the arifun, if the muluk, if the kings and sultans knew about it, they would fight us with their swords over it, to have something like that, right? وَمَنْ ذَاقَ وَجَدَ, and whoever tastes it knows about it and has seen it. And it's something that can only come about via dhawq. One can explain it over and over again, but it's very difficult to explain unless one has experienced some of that. So our awliya, this is what they tell us, our teachers, that one should immerse themselves in the divine presence, as it is all around us anyway, to begin with, but to strive and to struggle and to try to fulfill the commandments and avoid the prohibitions, and have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have a good opinion of the khalq, have a good opinion of people, and then inshallah you will get there, bi'idhnillah. So one more thing, I think, in this chapter, or this discourse, where he says, يا غلام اشتغل بنفسك ثم غيرك لا تكن كالشمعة تحرق هي نفسها وتضيء لغيرها لا تدخل في شيء بك وبهواك ونفسك. الحق عز وجل إذا أرادك لأمر هيأك له، إن أرادك لنفع الخلق ردك إليهم وأعطاك ثباتا ومداراة لهم وقوة على مقاساتهم، يوسع قلبك للخلق ويشرح صدرك ويقذف فيه الحكم، يلاحظ باطنك ويسر إلى سرك، فحينئذ يكون هو لا أنت. أما سمعت قوله تعالى عز وجل يقول يا داود إنا جعلناك خليفة في الأرض، اعتبر قوله إنا جعلناك خليفة، ما قال أنت جعلت نفسك، فالقوم لا إرادة لهم ولا اختيار، بل هم في مجرد أمر الحق عز وجل وفعله وتدبير إرادته. يا منعزل عن الطريق المستقيمة لا تحتج بشيء، فما لك حجة الجاذب بين يديك، الحلال بين والحرام بين، ما أوقحك على الله عز وجل، ما أقل خوفك منه، ما أكثر تهاونك برؤيته عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال خف من الله عز وجل كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. So he says, and this is towards the end, page 333, second paragraph. It says, "O young man," obviously the addresses to everybody, "attend to your own needs, be useful to yourself and then to others. Do not be like the candle that burns itself out while providing light for others. Do not embark on something on account of you, your passions, your hawa, and your lower self, your nafs. When the Lord of Truth wants you for some purpose, He will equip you for it. If He wishes you to be useful to His creatures, He will send you back to them. He will give you firmness and courtesy for dealing with them, as well as strength to endure the trouble they cause. He will make room in your heart for creatures. He will open your breast wide and fill it with the elements of wisdom, of hikam. He will take care of your inner and gladden your innermost being, your sirr. So now it will be He, not you. Surely you have heard His words, Azza wa Jal, O David, we have appointed you as a viceroy in the earth. Inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. He did not say you have appointed yourself. Thus the people of the Lord have no will of their own and no personal preference, but are simply at the disposal of the commandment of the haqq, of the Lord of Truth, His action, His management, and His will. O you have deviated from the straight path, do not offer any pretext, for you have no evidence to show. The highway is right in front of you. What is lawful, halal, is quite plain, and what is unlawful, haram, is also quite plain. How imprudent you are toward Allah, how little is your fear of Him, and how great your disdain for His sight. The Prophet ﷺ reporting of said, fear Allah as you see Him, if you do not see Him, He surely sees you, or ta'bud Allah, worship Allah as if you see Him, I think is the riwayah. The people of wakefulness have seen Allah with their hearts, so their scattered fragments have come together. They have been poured into a mold and become one single item. The barriers between them and Him are tumbling down. The outer structures, the mabani, have been demolished, and the inner contents, ma'ani, remain. The links have been disconnected between them and al-fani, that which is not really there, of the dunya, and the Lords have attention to Him alone. Then when this process is completed, He is in a situation which no eye... the Lord's links have been disconnected, and the Lords have been disposed, so they have nothing left apart from the Lord of Truth. They have no speech, they have no movement, and no joy in anything until they have generally experienced this. So when this really comes about, the matter is settled where they are concerned. First, they leave the slavery or the riq of this world and servitude or budiyya to it. Then they leave behind everything whatsoever apart from al-haqq. They do not cease having dealing with Him and in His house, and they are put to the test, that we may show you, we may see how you behave. فَلْيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. The innermost being is the king, the heart is the qalb, is His chief minister, while the lower self, the tongue, and other organs are servants in the presence of these two. The innermost being draws its water from the ocean of the Lord of Truth. The heart draws its water from the innermost being, from the sir, and the tranquil self, and nafs al-mutma'inna, now it's beyond al-lawama, it's mutma'inna, draws its water from the heart. The tongue draws its water from the lower self, and the other limbs and organs draw their water from the tongue. If the tongue is sound, the heart will be sound, but if the one is corrupt, the other will also be corrupt. Your tongue needs the bridle of pious devotion, taqwa, and turning in repentance from irrational speech and hypocrisy. If you persevere in this, the eloquence of the tongue will be transformed into the eloquence of the heart. Then when this process is completed, it will be enlightened, and the light will be transmitted from it to the tongue and the other parts of the body. At this stage, speaking with the tongue brings nearness, and one who is in the state of nearness or qurb has no language, no prayer of supplication, and no remembrance. Prayer, remembrance, and speech are in distance, bu'd, because they emanate from the heart, not from the tongue. In nearness, there is only silence, in other words, tuma'nina, stillness, quietness, contentment, and enjoyment of the vision. So the Shaykh in these, I read all of this because all of it is very important, beginning from the part when he said, attend to your own needs, be useful to yourself and then to others. And I think this is especially important and poignant today, where we have many, many Muslims who are extremely well-intentioned, I think, and very active and looking to change the world and bring good into the world, and seeing everything around them. And so we have this kind of activist Muslim kind of paradigm today, and I think it could be a very positive thing, but oftentimes if it's not done right, then it winds up just being a sort of as Dr. Abdul Hakim Walead said recently, part of a grievance culture, part of just complaining, and Muslims become just so mired in securing what they think to be their rights, like make sure we have halal food in the university cafeteria, and it's okay that we can wear hijab and go to the department store without anybody harassing us, and let's motivate everybody and get out and get the vote going and make sure we vote for the right candidates and become civic minded and activist. And so all that is good. I'm not saying that none of that is needed, but what is the impetus behind it? How is it being propelled? What's motivating it? If it just sounds like it's coming out of just grievances and complaining, and we just wind up being this kind of special interest group that is looking to make sure it gets its piece of the pie in the general greater, whether it's American culture or European culture or Australian culture, and this kind of applies more to Muslims in the West, I think. So that's why I use those examples versus the events of the past few months. This pandemic has laid bare to us all of the myriad issues that all of humanity is facing, that is going to put us in a lot of trouble. And so I think rather than just nitpicking and choosing things that seem applicable or specific to us as a Muslim body, as a Muslim group, humanity needs us. Humanity needs us to provide solutions. And those solutions are not going to be in the fairly mundane of halal meat and beard length and hijab and all the other things that we tend to kind of get worked over about, but it's going to be in fixing and rectifying the batin, right? People's souls are suffering. People know they're suffering. They don't know why they're suffering. They know something's not right, and they can't put their finger on it. And so we've come in an age where we think the amelioration of the zahir, of the exterior, is going to give us that satisfaction. So the proliferation of plastic surgery and the narcissism associated with social media, and people putting their private information out and the pictures, and all these things are all indicative or symptomatic of something that's kind of a greater hole that's trying to be filled, which is namely the hole that's within the soul. And so we don't want to just say the right words because we're charismatic and we're creative and we theorize correctly. We want to be muwaffaq, right? We want to be people who are going to be the eyes and the ears and the tongue of God, as mentioned in the Hadith al-Qudsi, right? When we get too close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with that which He has obligated upon us, and then they do it in a way, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah loves us, and then He becomes the eyes, the ears, the tongue, the hand, the foot, by which we act. That's what we want to get to. And this is what the Shaykh is trying to say. So he says, اشتغل بنفسك, have a program of spiritual purification that you need to work on, that you do every day. That includes your awrad, the hizb of Quran, that includes some of the mindfulness, as I think I would best describe it, exercises that we've been talking about. So think about when someone says ittaqillah to you, why does that aggravate you? Why does that bother you? If it does aggravate you, then you need to think about, should it aggravate me or should I welcome it? And learn to release and liberate your lower soul from the preoccupation with people's validation of you and what they say about you and what they don't say about you. Release that. Also, don't be a servant to your own whim and your caprice and your own feelings. Sometimes things that are right won't feel right, especially if you're not quite in the maqam, in the place where your sir, as he's talking about at the end of this paragraph, is speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the theme we've been seeing throughout in these discourses, that there's a hierarchy, according to the Shaykh. Not him, but also others have said the same thing. So at your most spiritual inner core is your sir. And this is the one that has direct connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the ilham to be inspired to do things. And then if that's running the show, then it will be the water for the qalb, as he said. And the qalb is the one that will say, do this or don't do that. And then the limbs will fall in line, right? And then the tongue has no choice because it knows that it is subservient to the heart, which is getting its ilham, right? And it's wahi in a sense, not wahi al-anbiya, not revelation to prophets, but the type of wahi or ilham that can come to al-awliya and the salihin, wal-abrar, wal-abdal, all of these names for people who are living a more concerted and focused Muslim life. These meanings will come to them and they continue to come to them, inshallah. When that starts to happen, then the tongue has to say, you know what, you guys are too strong for me. I have to just fall in line. I have to do what you guys are telling me to do. And I'm going to only speak when something is good to say. And I'm going to remain silent if I have nothing good to say, because that's what my sir is telling me. And there's also going to be the speech of the heart, right? So he talked about the eloquence of the heart, fasahat al-qalb. So it's like not even saying things inside yourself in your heart. You know how like we play out the scenarios in our head and we say like 10 times over, this is what I'm going to say to this person when I see them. And then when you rehearse it over and over, then you kind of you make it that much closer to actually being said. And even though it's against your better judgment to say those things, all you need is just a trigger, a tipping point, and then all those things come out because you already rehearsed it in your head. But if you never rehearsed it in your head to begin with, if you began with husn al-dhan and making excuses and dismissing just, the feeling of tashaffi that he talks about here, like venting, we call it grievance culture. I think it's also a venting culture. We like to vent a lot, and people vent all over the place. It's like poisonous because, you see other people venting, then it breeds more venting. It's like a contagion, like this pandemic. So you see it all over the place, and then people start to feel like they're justified in doing it. This whole phenomena of trolls on the internet and people saying despicable things and and ghastly things that you would never imagine they would say to one another in person. But this has become kind of the modus operandi. Is how people operate now, and they feel justified in doing it because they kind of see it proliferating everywhere. And we are people of ta'anni, right? The Prophet ﷺ, a delegation came to him, and he said to this delegation, you have two attributes that the Prophet loves, Allah and the Prophet love. They said, what is that, Ya Rasulullah? They said, al-hilm wa ta'anni, or al-anat. Clemency, you're clement, and you take your time before you say something or do something. These are the prophetic character traits. This is what we want to cultivate within ourselves and within our children and within our spouses and within society at large. And you can't cultivate that unless you're living it too. So if we're just so pumped up and we are, perpetually outraged at everything evokes outrage with us and is a grievance and is a complaint, and how can this be and how can that be, and look at this, and we put our little pictures on Facebook and like some video of something outrageous going on, and we put a little title on it. We don't even know the whole backstory to that, but we add to the I think the vacuous and very poisonous atmosphere that this consistent grievance and venting culture has led us to. And wallahi, I believe this, we are the only group, we're the last group left that can put a stop to this. Nothing else is going to put a stop to this. No one else is going to give people hope. No one else is going to show them the potential of the human soul, of the human condition, to transcend all of this, to move beyond all of this, to be in a place where people will feel things are fair and equitable and just and beautiful, and give you the ability to see the beauty in things all around us. When Muslims built things, they didn't just think about functionality like in the latter part of the 20th century. They also thought about the beauty of things, and they thought about beauty that addresses the soul, not just the eyes. So you look at modern office buildings today, and many of the hospitals that were built in the 70s, 80s, and 60s, and these modern office concrete block things, and the theme back then was functionality. So functional, make it just the right size. All we need is a room that's 3 by 4 meters or 3 by 2 meters, and same height as long as a person can stand in it. And it need not have anything on the walls. The walls are very drab. Sometimes not a lot of sunlight coming in. And this is something that's agitating to the soul, right? The soul wants space. It wants potential. It wants to see things. You look at Muslim architecture, traditional Muslim architecture, that was part of the ethos, that we want to do things that are going to give, raha, ease, and a sense of tranquility and serenity to the soul when it walks into the room, right, or walks into the space. And you look at even some of the masajid that we built in Europe and North America, it looks like something out of Blade Runner. I haven't seen that movie, but I assume it's something about future. Good reference. My Nashid artist told me that reference works. Haven't been hitting references very well lately, but I'm trying to do a little better with that. Something that's just grating to the sensitivity of the human being. So we have the potential. We built civilizations like that. We've done that. And when we say we, I say we kind of in a greater sense. It was our predecessors, and we have to take the same ma'ani, we have to take the same meaning, the same principles, and apply them in a context as we see them. But we can't do any of that unless I really believe it begins with words of people like Sayyid al-Qadir al-Jilani. Sometimes people call this type of discourse and Sufis, they're apolitical and quietist, and they're just into themselves, and they want to go sit in the cave and make a dhikr with the tasbih. They don't really care about anybody else. It's quite the opposite. The whole thing is they're trying to be as beneficial as possible in the highest sense of the meaning and of the word, but by first putting themselves in a space internally, spiritually, that they can be the most beneficial and effective for others. And in order to do that, you have to be muhassam, right? This thing has to be a fortress spiritually inside. You need spiritual fortitude. How else can you deal with everything that's going on outside of you? All of these things that, and the rapid change and the irritability and the anxiety and trepidation that's all over the place. Depression. We're going to have probably a huge mental health pandemic in the wake of this pandemic as well. Who are the people who are going to, pick up the broken pieces? And I would say also the broken people. And we're fighting over, whether we should pray 8 or 20 rak'ahs in Taraweeh and Ramadan, and what day should we do Eid, and should we cite the moon, or should do calculations. And these are the things we get mired in. We have such a much, much bigger job to do, and much bigger potential of where we're going to be needed. And myself and my teachers, we believe this is where it starts. It starts with you. As the Shaykh said, ibda bi nafsika. Start with yourself. Ishtaghil bi nafsika. Work on yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sayuhayyuka. Allah will prepare you. And then He's going to assign you to the place that you need to be. But start it here. Build yourself. Do the best that you can. And then the doors, inshallah, will be forthcoming, and you'll see them clearly. And when you enter them, you will not be entering by yourself. It will not be with your hawa, with your caprice. It will not be by your own choice or your whim, but you will feel that Allah is pushing you through that door and guiding you through that door. Inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.